Hi there, this is Jeanette. Thanks so much for joining me today. I have a new video for Whimsy Stamps, and it features their clear stamp set called Heroes. What I've done is I've created two single-layered cards by pairing up the stamp set with some stencils. One is a police officer themed card and one is a firefighter themed card. And for both of them, I've used the sentiments that are included in the stamp set. So I am going to create the card base out of Bristol Strathmore paper. So I'm cutting this at 4 1/4 by 11, just trimming off the excess here. And then I will take it to my score buddy and I will score it at 5 1/2 to create a top folded card. So the idea here is that I'm going to mask off part of the card so that I can stamp the hats there. So I'm just sort of measuring the width of the hats so I know how much I want to mask off. And I'm using this T ruler because it sits up, the T part at the top of the T sits up against the cardstock and allows you to draw a really nice straight line right across. Then I'm going to be taking some post-it note paper. So this paper is sticky like on the entire back surface. And I'm just cutting it at half to sort of save it. And I'm going to be masking off part of my card. So here I realized I was masking off the wrong part. I want to mask off the middle. That's where I'm going to be stamping the hat. So I'm just using the paper to mask it off. Then I'm going to put my stencil over top, making sure that it's pretty straight. And I like the way the stencils are made because they have that sort of white perimeter around the stencil, so you can really line it up on your cardstock. And I used a little bit more of the post-it paper just to hold the stencil down. And now I am just taking a blending tool here and I am inking up the entire area. Once I'm done with that blue color, I'm going in with a slightly darker color just around the edges so that it gives it a little bit of dimension. It doesn't look just one shade. I think that looks pretty nice when you use like something a little darker around the edges. And I'm going to do the same exact thing to the bottom portion. And I have an ink blender for each of the inks so that I don't get the ink, you know, if you use the same blender, it's going to all sort of look the same. So I'm doing the edges here. And then I will go in with that darker ink color and just ink up the edges of the card. So again, it gives it a little bit more depth and definition. And you can use a pretty light hand here. You don't want to have too much ink on your card. You want it to look nice and soft. And then once that's done, I can peel off that post-it tape and I have that nice blank area inside. I cleaned up my mat and now I'm putting this into my MISTI, and this is going to allow me to stamp the stamp exactly where I want it to be without worrying if I have to restamp it about sort of getting that double line. I'll be able to restamp it and stamp exactly in the right place, the same place as previous, because nothing has moved. So I'll swing the arm down. It picks up the stamps. I'm going to be using Archival ink because this is waterproof. You can use you can watercolor over this ink and it won't run. And you can see I didn't get the clearest of impressions, so I'm going to do it 1 or 2 more times until I have the intensity that I want. And that's why I really love using the MISTI for this purpose. And now I'm going to color in the image really very roughly. I'm not trying to get a perfect coloration here. So you can see I'm just using the exact same colors that I used to blend the stencil. I'm using those colors to watercolor over. And what this does is it really unifies the card. It makes it look very cohesive because I've got the exact same colors going on in what is sort of like the pattern paper, the ink with the stencil, and then the image itself. So I'm going on first with the lighter color, and I am blending with a paintbrush, and I'm using the water to sort of clean my brush and make sure I don't get too much ink, so that I can have some darker areas and some lighter areas. I'm going to do the badge the same way, just working with that lighter blue. And this is a new paintbrush that I picked up in my latest haul, and I have to say I really like it. It feels really nice when you're holding it. It has like a really nice weight to it. It's not too heavy, but you can still sort of feel it in your hand, and I find it works really well. So now I'm going in with the darker blue here. I'm going to add all my shadows. It's going to be a little darker here in the inside part of the hat. And the image already sort of has the lines where the shadows are supposed to be, so I'm just really following that. And again, I'm not being too precise, I'm not being too picky about my coloring. I really just want to get a little bit of shadows there, but it doesn't have to be perfect. The important thing is just sort of blend so that you don't have any harsh lines. And anytime you think you have too much ink on your paintbrush, you just sort of swirl it around in that water and then dab off the excess on the paper towel. So once the hat's done, I'm going to go move on to the badge, do the exact same thing. I did need to put a little bit more ink there on the surface of my, I guess my mat, it's called. I have the Tim Holtz glass medium mat. That's what I'm working on. I really love it. And it comes with a small mat. That's what I'm sort of working on. And then over on the side, you can pull up, that's where the mat usually is stored. You can pull that up and use that to sort of put your ink on. And that way it's not close enough to your card that you're going to ruin your card. It's over on the side, but still accessible. I'm using some zig markers to color in the stars because I didn't have like the right colors in Distress ink to get the color that I wanted. So I'm just using 2 of the zig markers. They will be listed below in the supply list, and you can also find it on my blog. And again, I'm keeping it simple. I'm just, coloring things blue or yellow. Like there's nothing, no other colors going on. It's pretty fast. Especially with the zig markers, they have that really fine tip, so you can be pretty precise where you're adding the color. I'm just darkening it up with that darker color now. So I felt like it was still a little bit stark, so I'm going to erase those lines. Those are the pencil lines I created in the beginning. I'm going to be adding the sentiments now. So I've got the hero, which I'm going to put up here on the top. And I'm going to have also the sort of phrase about what a hero is, and that's going to be on the bottom of the card. It's sort of cut off. You can't see that I'm stamping it, but I stamped both of them at the same time. So like I was saying, I found it a little stark still, like the difference between where I have the basket weave stencil and then where the hats are. So I thought what I'd do is I would stencil over this part, but with a very sort of neutral color. So I chose, I think it's called Old Paper. It's a Distress ink. And I'm going to just very lightly sponge in that area. And I did mask it off. You saw I masked off the area so I won't get it on the blue. And I'm using one of these little like finger sponge daubers so that I can go around the images and not get any ink on top of the images. You can see how fast that was, and it just sort of finishes it off a little bit. And then I'll just go around the edges again to create a little bit of a shadow effect. And then that was it. That's the first card completed. Now we'll go on to the next card. So again, I created the card base the exact same way. This time though, I'm masking off the outer edges and I'm applying color to the middle part. So again, I'm using 2 colors so that the edges are a bit darker than the middle. And I'm using this stencil. It sort of reminds me of Flames a little bit, so that's why I'm using it. But I don't want it to be like perfect and very symmetrical. So what I'm doing is I'm sort of inking on it and then I'm moving it slightly and inking it again. So that way it looks less perfect, if that makes any sense. So that'll be my background. And then I'm going to just wipe down the surface again. I'll erase those lines. They were created when I was determining how much of the card I was going to mask off. And now I will again use my MISTI and I will stamp in. This time I'm going to be stamping the hat for the fireman and the fire hydrant. Because I want one to be on top of the other, I'm going to end up masking to create that look. So I stamped the hat, then I stamped it again on that post-it paper to create a mask that I can lay over top of the hat. And now I can stamp the fire hydrant, and after I'm finished I can pull off that mask and it will look like the fire hydrant is sitting behind the hat. So that was easy peasy to do. I will stamp the sentiments at the same time since I'm here. Might as well get it done. And I only stamped it like one time. I inked it up one time. I wanted more of a fainter look. If you want it crisper looking, then you can of course stamp it a second time. And now I'm going to use some more distress ink. I think this is Candied Apple, and very roughly color in the fire hydrant, and I'll be doing the hat in black soot. So all these things will be listed below the video so that you can check out what I used. So again, you can see how I'm really doing this quickly. I don't want it to look perfect. I just want a little bit of color added so that, you know, it gives a little pop of red, and then I'll have the black there. But again, it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm actually going to leave where the badge is. I'm just going to leave it as is because you know, it's sort of a golden color and I felt I didn't want to mess with it too much. So again, just where I think there's going to be shadows, I will deepen up those areas with added ink. And that card is now done too. So these are the 2 cards I created. I really love this set. I think these are great cards to make to give to the important people in your community. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope it's inspired you to create cards like this as well. And a full list of the supplies and links to those supplies will be found below this video on YouTube, or you can check my blog. Thank you so much for watching.